Everyone thought Miranda Locke had disappeared, another shattered soul lost to betrayal. But what they didn't know was that she wasn't broken, she was waiting. Every smile she faked, every secret she buried, every sleepless night spent planning, was building toward this moment. And when her enemies finally looked into her eyes again, they realized too late, Miranda hadn't come back for forgiveness. She had come back for revenge. Miranda Locke had always believed that the foundation of her life was steady, solid, like the walls of the Locke estate that had stood for generations. From the outside, she appeared to be the woman everyone envied, refined, elegant, wife to a successful man, and mother to two radiant daughters who seemed to embody the promise of tomorrow. To friends and acquaintances, she was the perfect example of composure, someone who carried herself with grace even when life tested her patience. But perfection was a fragile glass. All it took was one fracture for the entire illusion to collapse, and Miranda would soon discover that her world wasn't made of stone. It was made of glass, ready to shatter into 1,000 sharp pieces. It began on a chilly evening in late November. The Locke mansion, with its sprawling gardens and polished marble floors, seemed unusually quiet. Miranda had been in the study, sorting through boxes of family albums that she had meant to reorganize for years. It was supposed to be a mindless, nostalgic task, a reminder of the love and laughter she thought her family had been built upon. As she slid one heavy leather-bound album across the desk, a folded envelope slipped out from between the pages. Curious, she picked it up. Her husband Damien's handwriting was unmistakable, bold, and slanted across the front. She smiled at first, assuming it was a forgotten love letter, or perhaps one of the little notes he used to leave for her in their early years of marriage. But when she unfolded the paper inside, her hands froze. The words weren't declarations of love to her. They were confessions of passion to someone else. Last night was unforgettable. I keep thinking about the way you looked at me, the way your hands trembled, as if you couldn't believe this was real. Don't worry, Miranda will never suspect a thing. Soon, everything will be ours. Miranda read the lines again, her vision blurring as her chest tightened. The air around her seemed to vanish. The Damien she knew, the husband who had sworn vows of fidelity, who had held her through the struggles of motherhood, who had promised her forever, wasn't the man who had written these words. Her knees buckled, and she gripped the edge of the desk to steady herself. The room tilted, the chandelier overhead casting fractured light that only deepened the cracks forming inside her heart. For a long moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All she could do was stare at the damning words that screamed betrayal in ink. "Damien," she whispered, her voice trembling as if speaking his name aloud might summon him, might force him to explain. But he wasn't there. Only silence answered her, heavy and suffocating. The letter slipped from her fingers, landing on the polished wood floor. She stared at it as though it were a poisonous thing, something that had the power to corrode everything she thought she knew. And, in truth, it did. Miranda's first instinct was denial. Surely there was an explanation. Maybe this was old, written before their marriage, a mistake from another lifetime. But the date scrawled at the bottom shattered that hope. It was just 3 months ago. 3 months. While she had been preparing a family vacation, while she had been hosting dinners for Damien's colleagues, while she had been sleeping beside him, he had been writing love letters to another woman. Her stomach twisted violently, and she stumbled toward the window, clutching the curtain as nausea threatened to overwhelm her. The cold night air pressed against the glass, mocking her with its sharp clarity. Inside, everything felt fogged, blurred, collapsing. She tried to compose herself, wiping away the tears before they could streak her cheeks. Miranda Locke was not a woman who broke easily. But beneath her cultivated strength, the betrayal cut deeper than any wound she had ever known. Her mind raced with questions. Who was this woman? How long had it been going on? Did their daughters know? Had their entire marriage been a lie? The sound of footsteps in the hallway snapped her back to the present. Quickly, she shoved the letter into her pocket and closed the album. Her twin daughters, Aurora and Selena, appeared in the doorway. Both were 18, vibrant, and strikingly beautiful in their own distinct ways. Aurora, the older by 5 minutes, carried herself with quiet intelligence, while Selena radiated a fiery energy that often drew attention wherever she went. "Mom? Are you okay?" Aurora asked, her brow furrowing as she studied Miranda's pale face. Miranda forced a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired." Selena tilted her head, her sharp gaze lingering on her mother longer than usual. "You look like you've seen a ghost." The word struck a nerve. In many ways, Miranda had. The ghost of the life she thought she had, the ghost of the man she thought she loved. But she couldn't tell them. Not yet. She couldn't bear to watch the light in their eyes dim the way hers just had. "I'll be fine," Miranda insisted, her voice steadier this time. "Go on, get ready for dinner." The girls hesitated but eventually left, their laughter fading as they disappeared down the corridor. When their voices were gone, Miranda pulled the letter out again, her hands trembling. She read it once more, each word carving deeper wounds into her already broken heart. And then a thought came to her, cold and terrifying. If Damien was capable of betraying her in this way, what else had he been hiding? That night, sleep refused to come. Miranda lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the steady breathing of Damien beside her. Every rise and fall of his chest felt like a lie, every turn of his body a reminder that she was sharing a bed with a stranger. She studied his face in the moonlight, searching for cracks in the mask he wore so well. When his arms slipped around her waist, she fought the urge to recoil. Instead, she forced her body to remain still, to play the part she had been cast in. But inside, her thoughts were spinning like a hurricane. Revenge wasn't yet a word she consciously considered, but deep in the marrow of her bones, something had shifted. The Miranda Locke who had once believed in love, in loyalty, in the sanctity of marriage, was dying. In her place, a new Miranda was being born, one who would not be broken, one who would not allow betrayal to go unpunished. For now, she remained silent. But the silence was not surrender. It was the silence of a storm gathering strength, waiting for the right moment to strike. And when it did, nothing would ever be the same again. The following days felt like living in a theater where Miranda was both actress and unwilling audience. Every morning, she woke beside Damien, pretending nothing had changed, yet every glance at him cut deeper. His smile, once a comfort, now seemed rehearsed. His affectionate touches now burned against her skin, reminders of hands that had caressed another woman. Miranda moved through the house like a shadow of herself, her mind circling endlessly around the letter. She wanted to confront him, demand answers, scream, cry, anything. But instinct held her back. Something told her the betrayal was more tangled than a single affair, and if she confronted him too soon, she might lose her only chance to uncover the full truth. So, she observed. Damien Locke was meticulous, a man whose professional reputation was built on discipline and control. But now, as Miranda watched more closely, she began noticing small fractures. Late-night phone calls, he ended quickly when she entered the room. Sudden business trips that had no prior mention. The faint scent of unfamiliar perfume clings to his suit jackets. Each detail was a pinprick, small but undeniable. Added together, they formed a wound too large to ignore. One evening, Miranda entered the kitchen to find Aurora and Selena whispering at the table, their textbooks spread open but untouched. Their laughter died the moment they noticed her. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Nothing," Selena said quickly, her eyes darting toward her sister. Aurora remained silent, fiddling with her pen. Miranda felt a pang in her chest. She knew her daughters, knew the little shifts in their expressions, the unspoken language they shared. Something was wrong. They knew something. But what? Later that night, Miranda stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. Her once bright eyes looked dull, shadowed by exhaustion and pain. She traced the lines around her mouth, the subtle creases that spoke of years spent smiling, worrying, enduring. "Who are you now?" she whispered to the woman staring back at her. The reflection had no answer. When she returned to the bedroom, Damien was on the balcony, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, urgent. Miranda froze in the doorway, straining to catch his words. She suspects nothing.
Trust me.
Everything will go as planned. Her blood turned to ice. The words weren't about work. She knew it with absolute certainty. He wasn't speaking like a businessman closing a deal. He was talking like a conspirator hiding a crime. Miranda slipped back into the hallway before he could see her. Her hands trembled as she clutched the railing, her pulse hammering in her ears. The betrayal wasn't just a passing affair. It was something larger, something calculated. And suddenly, she feared it wasn't only her marriage at stake. The next morning, Miranda searched Damien's study under the guise of tidying. She had always respected his privacy before, never questioning what he kept locked in drawers or filed neatly in cabinets. But that trust was gone now. Every locked drawer was a challenge, every folder a potential clue. She found nothing at first: financial statements, contracts, company documents, all impeccably arranged. But then, tucked at the bottom of a drawer, she discovered a photograph. It was of Damien, arm wrapped around a striking woman with chestnut hair and a smile that seemed both radiant and predatory. They weren't posed like colleagues or casual acquaintances. They were posed like lovers. On the back, written in the same bold hand as the letter, were the words, "To us, forever. Fiona." Miranda's breath caught in her throat. The mistress had a name now. Fiona. A woman who had invaded her life like a thief in the night. She closed her eyes, trying to steady herself, but rage coursed through her veins like fire. This woman wasn't just a shadow anymore. She had a face, a name, a claim on Damien's heart. Miranda pressed the photo to her chest, her nails digging into the edges. Forever?
No.
She would make sure forever never came for them. But what unsettled her most wasn't Damien's betrayal, it was her daughter's silence. Aurora and Selena seemed distant, distracted. At dinner, they exchanged glances when Damien spoke, as though sharing a private language. When Miranda asked about their day, their answers were curt, rehearsed. One night, unable to contain herself, Miranda confronted Aurora gently while Selena was out with friends. "You've seemed different lately," Miranda said softly, sitting on the edge of her daughter's bed. "Is there something you're not telling me?" Aurora hesitated, her pen pausing mid-scribble over her notebook. Her dark eyes flicked to her mother's, filled with something Miranda couldn't quite name. Pity? Guilt? "I'm fine, Mom," Aurora said, forcing a small smile. "Really?"
Don't worry about me.
But Miranda did worry. That smile was too brittle, too forced. When she left the room, Miranda's suspicion deepened. Her daughters knew something. They were hiding it. And whatever it was, it connected to Damien. 2 days later, her fears crystallized into something undeniable. Miranda was returning from the market when she saw them. Aurora and Selena, stepping out of a cafe across town. They weren't alone. Walking beside them, laughing easily, was the same woman from the photograph. Fiona. Miranda's body went rigid. Her daughters weren't just aware of the affair, they were involved. Aurora noticed her first, freezing mid-laugh. Selena turned and followed her sister's gaze, her smile evaporating as her eyes met Miranda's. For a long, excruciating moment, none of them moved. The air seemed to thicken, silence stretching between them. Then Fiona slipped on her sunglasses and walked away, leaving Miranda face to face with her daughters. Miranda's voice trembled as she spoke, barely louder than a whisper. What are you doing with her?" Neither girl answered. Their silence was heavier than any denial. That night, Miranda sat alone in the darkened living room, waiting. When the clock struck midnight and the house was silent, she finally let the tears fall. Not just for Damien's betrayal, but for the realization that her daughters were part of it. Willingly or unwillingly, they had stepped into the orbit of the woman who had destroyed her marriage. And in that moment, Miranda knew one thing with chilling clarity. The betrayal she faced wasn't only from her husband. It was rooted inside her family, closer and more poisonous than she had ever imagined. As the grandfather clock chimed once, Miranda whispered to herself, her voice raw with fury and pain. This isn't the end. This is only the beginning. Miranda Locke had never known silence to be so suffocating. It pressed down on her like a living thing, filling every corner of the Locke estate, lurking behind every half-spoken word. She had spent the last 3 nights pacing the halls, the echo of her own footsteps the only sound that dared to accompany her. Her daughter's betrayal weighed heavily than Damien's affair. A husband's disloyalty was one thing. It was almost expected in the circles Damien moved in. But her daughters? The 2 souls she had carried within her, nurtured and raised with unyielding love. Seeing them beside her, beside Fiona, had ripped Miranda apart in ways she could barely comprehend. She couldn't sleep. Whenever she closed her eyes, the image returned. Aurora's startled face, Selena's guilty stare, Fiona's smug retreat into the crowd. She replayed it over and over, searching for answers. Were they protecting their father? Were they seduced by Fiona's charm, her money, her promises? Or had they turned against her completely? On the 4th night, Miranda decided she could no longer hold her tongue. She waited until after dinner, when Damien retreated to his study with a glass of whiskey and a stack of papers, and the girls retreated to their rooms. Then, she climbed the stairs to the twins' shared lounge, where Aurora sat curled on the couch with a book and Selena scrolled absently on her phone. Both looked up as she entered, and for a fleeting second, Miranda saw her daughters as children again, their wide eyes filled with innocent curiosity. But the illusion dissolved quickly, replaced by wariness. "We need to talk," Miranda said, her voice low, firm. Aurora shut her book, setting it carefully on the table. Selena leaned back, her lips tightening. About what? Miranda stepped closer, her gaze fixed on them. About Fiona. The room went still. Aurora's eyes flickered downward. Selena's jaw clenched. "I saw you," Miranda continued, her voice trembling despite her efforts to remain calm. "Both of you. With her. Do you have any idea what she's done? What is she doing to this family?" "Mom," Aurora began, but Miranda raised her hand, silencing her.
No.
"Don't defend her. She is destroying my marriage. She is poisoning your father. And the 2 of you," Miranda's voice cracked. "The 2 of you are standing beside her, as if she belongs in your lives. Why?" Aurora's lips parted, but no words came. Selena, however, met her mother's gaze with unflinching defiance. "Maybe because she treats us like adults," Selena said sharply. "Maybe because she listens when we talk. Maybe because—" "Selena," Aurora hissed, cutting her off, but the damage was already done. Miranda's breath caught. "She listens? She treats you like adults? She's manipulating you. Can't you see that? She doesn't care about you. She only cares about what she can take." Aurora stood, her hands trembling. "Mom, you don't understand. It's complicated." Miranda's heart ached at the sight of her eldest's guilt. She reached out, desperate to bridge the gap. "Then help me understand. Please, Aurora. Tell me why you're protecting her." Aurora's eyes glistened, but she said nothing. She turned away, biting her lip, as if the truth was locked inside her throat. Selena, on the other hand, crossed her arms, her face hardening into a mask Miranda didn't recognize. "You're just angry because Dad chose someone else," Selena snapped. "Maybe you should stop blaming everyone else and look at yourself." The words cut deeper than any blade. Miranda staggered back as if struck, her vision blurring with tears. "Selena," she whispered, her voice breaking. Aurora shot her sister a horrified glance. "Stop it. That's not fair." But Selena didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed cold, unyielding. Miranda fled the room before they could see her collapse. She stumbled into the hallway, clutching the banister as sobs racked her chest. She wanted to scream, to tear the house apart brick by brick, to purge the poison that Fiona had poured into her family. Instead, she forced herself to breathe. In through her nose, out through her mouth. Slowly, deliberately. Rage would consume her if she let it. She needed clarity. She needed patience. She wiped her tears, straightened her spine, and descended the stairs. But when she passed Damien's study, she froze. Through the crack in the door, she saw him at his desk, the amber glow of his lamp illuminating his face. He wasn't reading papers. He was on the phone again, his voice low, urgent. Yes, the accounts have been transferred. She has no idea. By the time she notices, it'll be too late. Miranda's blood ran cold. Accounts. Transferred. She pressed her back against the wall, straining to hear more. The girls are on our side. That makes things easier. Trust me, Fiona, Miranda won't have the strength to fight us. Her hand flew to her mouth to stifle the cry, threatening to escape. Fiona. He was speaking to her. And worse, he was confirming Miranda's greatest fear. Her daughters weren't just complicit. They were being used. Miranda retreated silently, her heart pounding so violently she thought it might betray her presence. She locked herself in the guest bedroom and collapsed onto the bed, shaking from head to toe. It wasn't just infidelity. Damien's betrayal wasn't limited to his body or his heart. He was dismantling her life piece by piece, conspiring with Fiona to strip her of everything, her family, her security, her dignity. And the girls, whether knowingly or not, they were tools in his scheme. Miranda stared at the ceiling, her tears drying into something hotter, sharper. She had been naive, blinded by loyalty, shackled by love. But no more. If Damien believed she wouldn't fight back, he was a fool. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the spark that would ignite her vengeance. Miranda Locke had always believed that pain was something you could measure, like the sting of a cut, the throb of a bruise, or the ache of a broken bone. But this pain, this betrayal, it was unquantifiable. It seeped into her bloodstream, poisoned her thoughts, and made her question everything she had once held sacred. Her husband's affair, her daughter's allegiance to the mistress. Her home is turning into a battleground. She felt like a ghost drifting through her own life, and yet, somewhere deep within the wreckage, a fire had started to burn. It was quiet, controlled for now, but it whispered a promise. They think you're broken, Miranda. Let them. That's when you strike. The next morning, Miranda pretended to carry on with her normal routine. She prepared coffee, dressed carefully, and even greeted Damien with the same calm composure he expected. But behind her poised expression, her mind was a whirlwind. When he left for work, she followed. Not openly, of course. Miranda knew Damien too well. She waited, counted the minutes, and slipped her car onto the road a safe distance behind his black sedan. He didn't head toward his firm's downtown offices. Instead, he turned down the industrial district near the riverfront, where warehouses and old shipping companies lined the streets. Miranda's heart hammered. She parked 2 blocks away and moved closer on foot, her heels silent against the cracked pavement. From the shadows, she watched Damien pull into a gated lot. A sign above the door read, Locke and Associates Holdings. Her breath caught. Holdings? She had never heard of this branch. They had always spoken about the law firm, about clients, about court cases. Not once had he mentioned a separate company. Moments later, Fiona stepped out of the building, smiling, confident. She wore a fitted dress, her hair swept back like a queen surveying her kingdom. Damien exited his car and kissed her on the cheek as if they were business partners meeting for brunch, casual, comfortable, practiced. Miranda gripped the brick wall beside her. Not just an affair. A partnership. A life I know nothing about. That evening, Miranda tried to keep her composure when Emily and Claire came home. She watched them closely at dinner, their glances at one another, the tension in their shoulders, the way their voices brightened unnaturally when Damien asked about school. She let the silence drag until it became unbearable. Then, calmly, she placed her fork down. Tell me, Miranda said softly, how long have you both been meeting Fiona? The girls froze. Emily's eyes darted to Claire's, searching for a response. Claire, braver, or perhaps more reckless, folded her arms. She understands us, Mom. She listens. The words cut deeper than any blade. Listens? Understands? as if Miranda had been deaf to them all these years. "You don't know her," Miranda whispered. "You don't know what she wants." Emily's voice cracked. "Maybe you don't know Dad." The room spun. Her own daughters, the ones she had carried, nurtured, sacrificed everything for, were now siding with the woman who wanted to destroy her. She felt her soul fracture. But she didn't scream, didn't collapse. Instead, she nodded once, rising from the table with regal calm. "Then perhaps it's time I learned," she said. Late that night, while Damien slept soundly beside her, Miranda slipped from the bed. Her hands trembled as she opened his briefcase and searched through the files. She found ledgers, bank statements, contracts, all tucked neatly into a leather folder marked with the holdings company name. Her eyes widened. Offshore accounts. Transfers in the millions. Shell companies registered under names she didn't recognize but tied back, unmistakably, to Damien. And Fiona's name appeared more than once, listed as a shareholder, a co-signatory, a partner in transactions that siphoned money away from their joint assets. Her chest tightened. "He's been moving everything, preparing to cut me out entirely." A wave of nausea overcame her, but she forced herself to keep reading. Then she found something that made her blood run cold. Trust agreements. Clauses with her daughters' names written clearly. Damien had already secured them in his secret empire, tying their loyalty not just emotionally, but financially to Fiona. By dawn, Miranda knew the truth. This wasn't simply a husband's affair. It was a conspiracy, a calculated dismantling of her life. Damien didn't just want Fiona. He wanted freedom, wealth, and their daughters, all tied neatly together in a new future that excluded Miranda Locke completely. When Damien finally left for work again, Miranda sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the folder she had copied page by page with her phone. Her hands were steady now. "They think they've cornered me," she whispered to herself. "But they've forgotten, Locke blood doesn't break. It burns." That evening, as she was about to hide her copied documents, Miranda's phone buzzed. An anonymous message appeared, with an attached image. It was a photograph of her, taken earlier that day while she had been outside the warehouse. The message read, "You're digging too deep, Miranda. Stop now, or lose everything faster than you imagine." Her breath caught in her throat. Someone was watching her. Someone new. And in that terrifying moment, Miranda realized this was only the beginning. The anonymous message replayed in Miranda's mind like a siren that refused to die down. She had always believed that betrayal was the deepest wound a heart could suffer. But this was something different. This was a game. A game in which she had unknowingly become the weakest piece on the board. And whoever had sent that message knew it. The next morning, Miranda moved through her house like a stranger trespassing in someone else's life. Every photo frame on the wall, every trinket on the shelf, mocked her. Once, this house had felt alive, warm with love and laughter. Now, it was a stage where every smile was scripted, every embrace was hollow, and every truth was buried beneath a lie. Damien kissed her cheek before leaving for work. She held herself still, unflinching, as though she were made of stone. Inside, her chest burned with the memory of him kissing Fiona in broad daylight. Emily and Claire barely spoke to her anymore. They were polite, distant, and cold. Their loyalty had been rewired, their affection redirected toward the woman Miranda despised most. But she didn't scream.
She didn't beg.
She didn't collapse into the role of a discarded wife. Instead, Miranda Locke decided that silence would be her weapon. She couldn't fight Damien and Fiona alone, not with their money, their influence, and now their grip on her daughters. She needed leverage. Proof wasn't enough. She needed allies. Her first call was to Daniel Avery, an old college friend turned investigative journalist. He had once told her, "If you ever need to dig where no one wants you digging, call me." "Miranda?" His voice was gruffer than she remembered, laced with years of chasing stories most people would never dare to touch. "It's been a long time." "Too long," she whispered. "Daniel, I need your help. But this can't be on record." There was a pause, then a quiet laugh. That bad, huh?
Worse, she said.
If I'm right, Damien's building something in the shadows. Offshore accounts. Shell companies. Fiona's at the center of it. And if I don't stop him, I'll lose everything, my daughters included. Silence stretched on the other end before Daniel spoke again. Send me what you've got. I'll start digging. For the first time in weeks, Miranda felt a spark of hope. That evening, Miranda prepared dinner as though nothing had changed. Damien came home late, reeking faintly of expensive perfume. Emily and Claire rushed to hug him, their faces lit up with adoration that stabbed at Miranda like a blade. She smiled through the pain, setting the table, playing the role of the obedient wife. But her eyes lingered on Damien a little too long, her smile a little too sharp.
He noticed.
Something on your mind, Miranda? He asked, his tone casual but his eyes narrowing. Just thinking, she replied, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. How lucky we are to have such a perfect life. The words dripped with honey, but inside, she was fire and steel. 2 nights later, Daniel called. His voice was urgent. Miranda, you were right. Locke and Associates Holdings isn't just a side business. It's a shell funnel. Damien's moving assets offshore, millions at a time. Fiona's listed as a co-owner on at least 3 fronts. And there's more, something bigger. What? Miranda whispered. I think they're planning to dissolve your joint estate. Legally. If he pulls this off, you'll be left with nothing. Not the house, not the accounts. Nothing. Her hand trembled as she gripped the phone. She had expected betrayal, but the scale of it was monstrous. Daniel, I need everything. Every detail. Every document. You'll have it, he promised. But Miranda, be careful. If they know you're digging, they won't just try to ruin you. They'll try to bury you. That night, as she slipped into bed beside Damien, Miranda felt his arm drape lazily across her waist. It used to comfort her. Now it felt like a shackle. She lay still, her mind racing. The anonymous message still haunted her. Someone was watching. Someone who didn't want her uncovering the truth. But who? Was it Damien? Fiona? Or someone else entirely? An unseen player with their own agenda? And then, as the clock ticked toward midnight, a realization hit her like lightning. If Damien wanted her out of the picture, why was he waiting? Why hadn't he filed, cut her off, destroyed her already? Unless there was something she still had. Something he needed. The next morning, Miranda received an envelope slipped under her front door. No return address. No markings. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 5 words scrawled in red ink. He won't stop at you. Miranda's hands shook as she read it over and over. Her blood turned to ice. He won't stop at me. Which meant Damien's betrayal wasn't just about her. It was about control. About power. About erasing anything or anyone who stood in his way. Her daughters weren't safe. Daniel wasn't safe. And maybe, just maybe, neither was she. Miranda Locke pressed the paper to her chest, her jaw tightening with a resolve she hadn't felt before. If he wants a war, she whispered into the silence of her home, he'll get one. The envelope sat on Miranda's dresser like a silent predator, its 5 words still burning in her mind. He won't stop at you. She had read the warnings so many times that the ink seemed etched into her skin. Whoever had sent it was close enough to know the truth, close enough to slip into her home unseen. The idea chilled her, but it also sharpened her focus. If Damien thought he could orchestrate her erasure quietly, he had underestimated her. Daniel's voice buzzed through her phone the next morning, low and urgent. Miranda, I dug deeper into Damien's shell company records. And I think I know why he hasn't cut you off yet. Her chest tightened. Tell me. There's a trust, Daniel said. One that requires your consent. A joint signature. Without it, Damien can't access a massive block of funds. Over $30 million. Miranda nearly dropped the phone. $30 million. A fortune she had never even known existed. Why would he hide this from me? She whispered. Because the minute you sign off, Miranda, you disappear. That money isn't for you. It's for them, for him and Fiona. You're the last obstacle. The room tilted, but Miranda gripped the edge of her desk, forcing herself to breathe. She wasn't just a wife he wanted gone. She was a lock he couldn't yet break. That evening, Emily came into Miranda's room. For a brief second, Miranda's heart lifted, hoping her daughter had come to talk, to bridge the growing divide. Instead, Emily stood at the door, her voice uncertain. "Dad says you've been stressed. He thinks maybe you should take some time away. Rest." The words sliced her deeper than she expected.
Rest.
Time away. A polite way of saying vanish. Miranda looked at her daughter, her beautiful, innocent child who was unknowingly being turned into a pawn. "Emily," she said softly, "do you trust me?" Her daughter hesitated, biting her lip, then lowered her gaze. "I don't know anymore." The crack in Miranda's chest widened. She nodded slowly. "That's fair. But one day soon, you'll see the truth." 2 nights later, Miranda parked outside Damien's warehouse office again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Daniel sat in the passenger seat, laptop open, wires trailing to a signal interceptor. "You're sure this will work?" she whispered. Daniel smirked faintly. "Trust me, I've made governments sweat with less." From the shadows, they watched Damien and Fiona enter the building. Soon after, Daniel's laptop pinged. "Got it. Surveillance feed. Let's see what they're hiding." The screen flickered, then stabilized, showing Damien and Fiona in a sleek office. Papers covered the table, maps and contracts scattered across it. Miranda leaned closer, her stomach nodding as she caught sight of a document stamped with bold letters. "Locke Global Expansion, Phase 1. "What the hell?" she whispered. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "They're not just moving money offshore. They're building something, an empire. Real estate, corporations, influence. This isn't about leaving you, Miranda. It's about replacing you." Her breath hitched. "Replacing me?" Daniel pointed at the screen. Fiona stood at the head of the table, her hand resting on Damien's shoulder like a queen crowning her king. "That woman isn't just his mistress. She's his partner, his future. And if you don't stop them, you'll be erased as if you never existed." The next day, Damien returned home unusually early. Miranda watched him carefully as he poured a glass of scotch, his expression unreadable. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "Different." She forced a smile. "Just tired." He studied her, his eyes narrowing. "You know, Miranda, trust is everything in a marriage. Once it's gone, there's no point in continuing." Her pulse quickened. "Is that how you feel?" His lips curved in a cold smile. "We'll see. Soon." It was a warning, subtle but lethal. He was circling her, waiting for the moment she slipped. But Miranda Locke wasn't going to slip. Not now. That night, Miranda opened her laptop and typed a message to Daniel. "Get me everything on Fiona Hayes. Every secret, every scandal, every weakness. If she's the queen on his board, then it's time we learn how to topple her." Her finger hovered over the send button, trembling not with fear, but with a surge of adrenaline. For weeks, she had been hunted, cornered, betrayed. But now, finally, Miranda was about to strike back. She hit send. An hour later, as she prepared for bed, her phone buzzed. Another anonymous message. This one had no words, only a picture. It was of Daniel Avery, taken from outside his apartment window. Her blood turned cold. The warning was clear. Whoever was watching her was now watching him too. And Miranda Locke realized with terrifying clarity, revenge wasn't just about patience. It was about survival. Miranda Locke had always believed that the cruelest betrayals came from lovers. She was wrong. The cruelest betrayals came from children, the ones you raised, the ones you bled for, the ones you thought would never turn their backs on you. And now, as she stood in the kitchen doorway, she realized she was living that very betrayal. It was nearly midnight when she heard muffled voices from the living room. Quiet, cautious, like whispers meant to stay hidden. Miranda's bare feet padded silently across the polished hardwood floor until she stopped at the corner. Emily and Claire sat close together on the sofa, their phones glowing in their hands. But it wasn't the phones that made Miranda's heart seize. It was the woman on the screen. Fiona Hayes. Your father says everything's on track. Fiona's voice purred through the speaker. We'll have what we need soon. You two just stay patient. And remember, don't let your mother suspect. Emily nodded. Claire smiled. We won't. She already seems lost anyway. Miranda's throat tightened.
Lost.
That was how her daughters saw her. Not a mother fighting for them. Not a woman clawing to hold her family together. Just lost. She backed away before they could hear her ragged breath. Her hands trembled, her knees nearly buckling.
He's poisoned them.
He's turned my own children into his accomplices. When Miranda slipped back into her bedroom, Damien wasn't there. His side of the bed was empty, the sheets cool. She didn't need to ask where he was. The lie was etched into every absence, every late night, every hollow kiss. But tonight, lying alone in the dark, Miranda's anger shifted. Damien's betrayal no longer stung with shock. It burned with purpose. He had crossed lines she could never forgive, not just with her, but with Emily and Claire. If Fiona thought she had claimed her daughters, Miranda vowed, she would soon learn what it meant to go to war with a mother. The next day, Miranda met Daniel at a quiet diner on the edge of town. He looked more tired than ever, his eyes shadowed from too many nights spent digging into Damien's empire. I found something, he said, sliding a folder across the table. It's worse than we thought. Inside were photos, bank transfers, and one document that made Miranda's stomach churn, a trust fund for Emily and Claire, set to activate upon your removal. Her voice cracked. Removal. Daniel nodded grimly. It's legal language, but the intent is clear. If you're divorced, declared unstable, or gone, your daughters inherit directly under Fiona's guardianship. Miranda pressed her hand to her mouth. Not only was Damien erasing her, he was binding their daughters to Fiona with money and power. Daniel leaned closer. Miranda, you can't just play defense anymore.
You need to strike.
But to do that, you'll need evidence strong enough to burn them both. Miranda's eyes narrowed. Then we burn everything. That evening, Miranda sat across from her daughters at dinner. The silence stretched, broken only by the clink of silverware. Emily avoided her gaze. Claire hummed softly, scrolling on her phone. Finally, Miranda spoke. I know you've been talking to Fiona. Emily stiffened. Claire looked up, wide-eyed, then forced a laugh. Mom, you're imagining things. Am I? Miranda leaned forward, her voice steady but sharp. Because last night, I heard her voice in this house. I saw her face on your phone. Don't lie to me. Emily's fork clattered against her plate. You don't understand. Fiona cares. She listens. Dad trusts her. And she's tearing this family apart. Miranda snapped, her control breaking. She's not your friend. She's not your mentor. She's a predator. Claire flinched, but Emily's face hardened. Maybe the problem isn't Fiona. Maybe it's you. The words landed like a blade between Miranda's ribs. Her own daughter, her blood, looked at her as though she were the enemy. She swallowed the pain and rose from the table, her voice cold and final. One day, you'll see her for what she really is. And when you do, I'll be waiting. Later that night, a message flashed across Miranda's phone. Unknown number. We share the same enemy. Meet me tomorrow. Midnight. Pier 17. Come alone. Her heart pounded. Was it a trap? A warning? Or the chance at an ally hidden in the shadows? Miranda stared at the message, weighing the risk. Then, slowly, she typed back one word. Agreed. At midnight the following day, Miranda stood at Pier 17. The fog rolled in thick over the water, the wooden planks creaking beneath her feet. A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, tall, cloaked in black. She stopped a few feet away, her voice low but steady. You don't know me, the stranger said, but I know Fiona Hayes. And if you want to destroy her, you're going to need me. Miranda's pulse thundered. She had no idea who this woman was, or whether she could be trusted. But in that instant, one truth became clear. The war had escalated. And Miranda Locke was no longer fighting alone. The mansion had turned into a battlefield of whispers, locked doors, and stolen glances. Miranda Locke moved through it like a shadow now, quieter than ever, but sharper too. Every word spoken in her presence, every glance exchanged between Damien and her daughters, every late-night call Fiona made from somewhere in the distance, Miranda collected them all like shards of broken glass. But shards were not just for cutting. They could also be pieced into a mirror, and Miranda was building hers, one that would reflect the truth at those who had tried to shatter her. Samantha had been avoiding her more openly, excusing herself whenever Miranda tried to ask simple questions. Eliza had grown more brittle, tempering her unease with forced laughter at dinner tables. Damien, on the other hand, had become unnervingly cordial, as if he thought Miranda had finally broken and accepted her place. But Miranda hadn't broken. She was only bending, preparing for the spring back. One night, when Samantha claimed she was working late at a friend's study group, Miranda followed her. The streets were quiet, but Samantha's car didn't head toward the library. Instead, she drove to a small cafe on the edge of town, dimly lit, nearly deserted. From her car, Miranda watched as Samantha slipped inside. Moments later, Fiona arrived. Miranda's breath caught, her chest tightening as she watched her daughter embrace the woman who had taken everything from her. Fiona smiled that serpent smile, tucking a strand of Samantha's hair behind her ear, as if she were her own child. Rage coiled in Miranda's gut, but she didn't storm inside. Not yet. She gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles whitened, forcing herself to breathe. This wasn't just betrayal, it was seduction. Fiona had poisoned her family, body, and soul. The next morning, Miranda slipped into Damien's study while he was gone. His arrogance was his weakness. He still believed her too broken to dare defiance. But Miranda had grown stealthier than he ever imagined. Inside his locked drawer, hidden beneath false bottoms, she found the documents: property transfers, offshore accounts, business deals signed not just by Damien but, with a cold sting of recognition, by her daughters. Her hands trembled as she read line after line. Damien had forged a future without her, tying Samantha and Eliza's names to Fiona's enterprises. If Miranda were to be erased, her daughters would inherit nothing from her but debt, while Fiona became the architect of their fortune. It wasn't just a betrayal of love anymore. It was a theft of legacy. Miranda pressed her hand to her chest, tears burning in her eyes. They had stolen her family, her home, her marriage, her name. But not her will. Not yet. That evening, Damien returned late, his suit reeking faintly of Fiona's perfume. Miranda was waiting in the living room, lights dimmed, her posture deceptively calm. "You've been busy," she said softly, swirling a glass of untouched wine. Damien paused in the doorway, his face tightening before smoothing into his usual mask. "Trying to keep this family afloat, as always." Miranda met his gaze, her voice steady. "Is that what you call signing away my daughter's futures?" The flicker in his eyes betrayed him. Just for a moment. But it was enough. "You've been snooping," he said flatly, stepping closer. "I've been surviving," Miranda answered, setting the glass down with a quiet clink. "But I won't stay quiet forever. Not while you and Fiona are weaving your little empire out of lies." His jaw clenched, and for the first time, he didn't respond with rage. Instead, he smiled, cold, razor-thin. "You think you're clever," he murmured, leaning close. "But you've already lost. The girls are mine. Fiona is mine. Everything you thought was yours is already gone." Miranda didn't flinch. "Then you've underestimated what's left in me." Later that night, Eliza slipped into Miranda's room, her eyes red from crying. "Mom," she whispered, clutching the doorframe. "Is it true? About the accounts, the businesses?" Miranda's heart clenched. "You've seen them?" Eliza nodded, tears streaking down her face. "I didn't sign anything. I swear." "Samantha did. She said Dad told her it was for the best, for all of us. But it feels wrong. Everything feels wrong." Miranda pulled her daughter into her arms, stroking her hair as the weight of betrayal pressed between them. One daughter had chosen Damien's side. The other was breaking under the pressure of divided loyalties. "Eliza," Miranda whispered fiercely, "no matter what they've told you, remember this. You are not theirs to control. You are mine. And I will not let them destroy you." Eliza sobbed against her chest, nodding. But Miranda knew tears weren't enough. Soon, Eliza would have to choose in the open. And choices would come with consequences. The next morning, a package arrived at the mansion. No sender's name, no return address. Inside was a single USB drive. Miranda locked herself in her room, plugged it into her laptop, and waited as the files opened. Her breath caught as she scrolled through them. Photographs of Damien and Fiona together, not just in intimate moments, but in meetings with men she didn't recognize. Bank transfers. Signed deals with companies under investigation. Hidden assets are spread across countries. And then, an image of Samantha shaking hands with Fiona across a table, Damien watching proudly in the background. It was proof. Proof of everything. Miranda leaned back in her chair, her pulse thundering in her ears. Whoever sent this wanted her to know the truth.
But why now? And who could it be?
The final file on the drive was a short video clip. Damien's voice, low and confident. "Once Miranda's out of the picture, Fiona, everything falls neatly into place. The girls will follow you. The business will be ours. And she'll have nothing." The screen went black. Miranda stared at the laptop, her face pale but her eyes burning with new fire. They wanted her erased. But Miranda Locke wasn't going anywhere. Not until she erased them first. The USB drive had been a spark in the dark. Now Miranda Locke was fire. She no longer trembled when Damien's shadow filled the doorway or when Fiona's voice echoed in her halls through a late-night call. She no longer wept when Samantha's laughter rang hollow or when Eliza's silence weighed heavily. Instead, Miranda sharpened her grief into resolve, turning her broken heart into a weapon. Her enemies believed her finished. They had mistaken survival for surrender. And that mistake would cost them everything. The question gnawed at Miranda. Who had sent the USB drive? Days passed with her keeping her expression neutral, waiting, listening. Then, one evening, she received a call from a blocked number. She hesitated, then answered. "Mrs. Locke," a male voice rasped, low and careful. "You don't know me, but I know Damien. I know Fiona. And I know what they're planning." Miranda's grip tightened on the phone. "Who are you?" "Someone who used to work for them," the voice replied. "Someone they left to rot when I was no longer useful. I can give you more than proof. I can give you the power to destroy them." Her pulse raced. "Why help me?" A dry laugh. "Because watching them burn will be my payment." The line went dead, leaving Miranda in stunned silence. But on her nightstand, where she'd set the phone, lay a new envelope slipped beneath her door. Inside, bank codes, transaction trails, photographs. It wasn't just proof now. It was ammunition. That night, Miranda prepared dinner herself, an unusual act that startled the household. She set the table with silverware that glimmered under the chandelier, laid out roast lamb and wine. Damien arrived late, his arrogance intact. Fiona called halfway through the meal, and Samantha excused herself to take the call, smiling secretly. Eliza picked at her food, her eyes flickering toward her mother with unspoken worry. Miranda, dressed in deep crimson, poured Damien a glass of wine. "To family," she said softly.
He smirked.
"To victory." Their glasses clinked, but Miranda's smile didn't falter. In her mind, she wasn't toasting him. She was bidding farewell to his reign. Over the next week, Miranda set her plan in motion. First, she confided in Eliza, carefully showing her parts of the evidence, enough to earn her trust without overwhelming her. Eliza's shock turned to fury, her loyalty solidifying at last. "I'll help you," she whispered. Second, Miranda began leaving subtle trails for Damien to find, small inconsistencies, documents placed slightly out of order, whispers to servants. Enough to make him doubt Fiona, to sow paranoia between them. Third, she contacted a lawyer in secret, transferring a portion of her hidden assets into a secure account that neither Damien nor Fiona could touch. She was preparing not just for war, but for survival after it. And finally, she played the role of the quiet, broken wife to perfection. She smiled at Damien when he entered the room. She offered Fiona false pleasantries on the phone. She let Samantha believe her distance was permanent, all while her mind drew the blueprint of their destruction. One evening, Miranda overheard Damien and Samantha speaking in hushed tones in the study. She pressed her ear to the door, her breath shallow. "Fiona says she's ready," Samantha whispered. "Mom's fading. She doesn't fight anymore." Damien's voice was low, pleased. "Good. Soon we'll move everything. She'll be left with nothing but memories. Fiona will take care of the rest." Miranda closed her eyes, bile rising in her throat.
Take care of the rest.
The words were venom. They weren't just planning to ruin her financially. They were planning something worse. She stepped away from the door, her hands steady, her heartbeat cold. The time for observation was over. It was time to strike first. The following morning, Damien stormed into his study, only to find his safe wide open. Documents lay scattered across his desk, the same ones Miranda had discovered, now neatly copied and replaced with damning annotations in her hand. A note sat on top. "Did you think I would never learn, Damien? Did you think betrayal goes unnoticed? Enjoy the taste of fear. It's only the beginning." His roar shook the walls. Servants scattered. Samantha rushed to his side. Eliza pretended to be shocked, though her trembling lips carried the faintest hint of satisfaction. Miranda stood at the end of the hall, calm, composed, watching him unravel. For the first time, Damien Locke looked hunted, and Miranda savored it. Damien Locke's fury was thunderous. For days, the mansion rattled with his temper, slammed doors, broken glasses, shouted demands. He interrogated staff, barked at Samantha, and accused Eliza of betrayal. But Miranda remained composed, her quiet smile cutting deeper than any scream. It wasn't fear that haunted Damien now. It was uncertainty. And uncertainty bred paranoia. Fiona arrived unannounced one evening, her heels clicking against the marble floors as if she owned the place. She and Damien locked themselves in the study, their voices rising in angry waves. Miranda lingered in the hallway, Eliza close behind her. "You swore she was finished," Fiona snapped, her voice shrill. "Yet here she is, sending little notes like some ghost that won't die." Damien growled back, "Don't you dare question me. She's bluffing. She doesn't have the guts to fight back." "She has something," Fiona hissed. "And if you don't handle it, I will." Miranda's lips curved in satisfaction. The cracks were widening. Soon, their empire would crumble, not with an explosion, but with collapse from within. Later that night, Samantha cornered Miranda in the kitchen. "What are you doing to Dad?" she demanded, her eyes flashing with anger. Miranda calmly stirred sugar into her tea. "I'm doing nothing. But perhaps you should ask yourself what he's doing to you." Samantha's voice shook. "He's protecting us. He's building a future for us, me, Eliza, for everyone. Fiona has poisoned you," Miranda cut in, her tone sharp as a knife. "She isn't your savior, Samantha. She's your executioner, and you're too blind to see it." Samantha's jaw trembled, but her resolve held.
No.
"You're jealous. You're bitter. You're trying to destroy him because he found someone better." Miranda looked into her daughter's tearful eyes, her heart breaking even as her voice hardened. "One day, Samantha, you'll understand what betrayal feels like. And when you do, you'll know I was the only one who ever tried to save you." Samantha stormed out, slamming the door. But Miranda saw it, the flicker of doubt in her daughter's eyes. Doubt was a seed. Seeds grew. The mysterious ally contacted her again, this time in person. They met in a shadowed corner of an underground garage. A man in his 40s, sharp suit worn at the edges, eyes filled with bitterness. "Call me Nathan," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "These are their offshore accounts. Evidence of fraud, tax evasion, laundering. If you want to bury them, this is your shovel." Miranda opened the folder, her breath steady despite the storm inside. And What do you want in return? Just one thing, Nathan replied coldly. When Damien falls, I want to watch. Miranda studied him for a long moment. His pain was old, carved deep into his face. Perhaps Damien had betrayed him, too. Perhaps Fiona. Either way, his hatred was real, and hatred was useful. You'll get your wish, Miranda said, tucking the folder into her bag. The next move came swiftly. Miranda leaked fragments of the documents, carefully chosen through anonymous channels. Journalists whispered. Officials stirred. Damien's business associates began pulling away, frightened by shadows of scandal. At home, Damien's temper worsened. Fiona snapped at him in public. Samantha grew defensive. Eliza remained quiet, a secret soldier by her mother's side. And Miranda? She played her role to perfection, smiling at Damien, brushing past him with a touch of mock affection, letting him believe she might still be broken. Until the right moment. That moment came one stormy night. Lightning cracked across the sky as Damien stormed into the bedroom, the leaked stories clutched in his hand. You think you're clever? He roared, shoving the papers at her. You think this will stop me? Miranda rose slowly, her crimson silk gown glowing under the flash of lightning. No, Damien. This won't stop you. But it will weaken you. And then, her voice dropped to a razor's edge. Then I'll destroy you. He lunged, grabbing her wrist, his face twisted with rage. But before he could speak, Eliza appeared in the doorway. Let her go, she said, her voice trembling but strong. For a moment, Damien faltered. His grip loosened. Miranda pulled her hand free, her eyes blazing. You've underestimated me for the last time, she whispered. The next morning, Damien received a summons. Court papers. Fraud investigations. Subpoenas. His empire, once untouchable, was under siege. Fiona's face turned white when she read the headlines. Samantha screamed at Miranda, accusing her of betrayal. Eliza stood silently beside her mother, her chin lifted in quiet defiance. And Miranda? She stood at the top of the staircase, calm and unshaken, watching the chaos unfold below. But she knew this was only the beginning, for Damien still had cards left to play. And Fiona was more dangerous than ever. The war wasn't over. It was only reaching its peak. The Locke mansion was no longer a home. It was a war zone dressed in marble and chandeliers. The storm Miranda had unleashed now tore through every corner of their lives. Damien's phone never stopped buzzing. Investors were pulling out. Journalists circled like vultures. The law was closing in, their subpoenas slicing through the empire he'd built on lies. Fiona, once radiant and untouchable, had grown restless, her sharp voice cutting through the house like a knife. Samantha clung to her father and Fiona, her loyalty still blind, while Eliza stood taller than ever beside Miranda, her eyes burning with quiet fire. The stage was set, and Miranda knew the endgame had begun. Fiona came to the mansion late at night, her heels echoing against the marble. She didn't wait for permission. She stormed into the study where Miranda sat waiting, the lamplight casting sharp shadows across her face. You, Fiona spat, her eyes venomous. You think you've won, don't you? Destroying his business, ruining his name. But you've forgotten one thing, Miranda. Miranda's lips curled in a calm smile. And what's that? Fiona leaned close, her perfume sickly sweet. I don't just own Damien. I own your daughter. Samantha is mine. And when the dust settles, she'll stand with us, not you. The words were designed to wound, but Miranda didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, eyes unblinking. If you think a mother stops fighting because you've stolen one child, then you've never met me. For the first time, Fiona hesitated. Miranda's calm unnerved her more than rage ever could. The next morning, Damien's world collapsed further. Police raided one of his offices. News outlets plastered his name alongside words like fraud, corruption, and money laundering. His face, once respected, was now infamous. He stormed back into the mansion, his suit disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. He looked less like the powerful man he once was and more like a cornered animal. "This is your doing," he snarled at Miranda, his voice raw. Miranda stood at the top of the staircase, her crimson dress trailing behind her like a queen in judgment.
No, Damien.
"This is your doing. Every lie, every betrayal, every choice, you handed me the weapons. I only pulled the trigger." His face twisted with fury, but beneath it was fear. Miranda saw it, and for the first time in years, she felt something close to triumph. But triumph came with pain. That evening, Samantha confronted her mother, tears streaming down her face. "You've ruined everything," she cried. "Dad's destroyed. Fiona says we'll lose everything, and it's all because of you." Miranda's heart cracked, but she forced herself to stay strong.
No, Samantha. It's because of them.
"Open your eyes. They've used you." Samantha shook her head violently.
No. Fiona loves me. Dad loves me.
"You're the one who's jealous, bitter, cruel." Miranda raised a hand, silencing her. "One day, Samantha, you'll understand. And when you do, you'll regret the side you chose." Samantha turned and ran, slamming the door. Miranda stood frozen, pain radiating through her chest. She had won battles, but she was losing her daughter. Nathan, her shadow ally, delivered the last piece of the puzzle. "Tomorrow," he told her, sliding another folder across the table, "they'll try to move what's left of their money.
Offshore.
Untouchable. If you act now, you can take it all before they even realize what happened." Miranda studied the papers, her fingers steady. This was it. The final strike. Not just to destroy Damien's empire, but to leave Fiona with nothing. And so she acted. Lawyers, investigators, banks, all moved in quiet synchronization under her command. By the time Damien and Fiona tried to access their accounts, they were gone. Frozen.
Seized.
Erased. The empire of Damien Locke was ash. The night of their final confrontation came with silence, heavy and suffocating. Damien and Fiona sat in the study, their faces pale, their eyes hollow. Samantha hovered nearby, trembling with confusion. Miranda entered slowly, Eliza at her side. She looked at them not as victims anymore, but as the victor. "It's over," she said simply. Damien slammed his fist against the desk. "You think you've won? You think this is the end?" His voice cracked, fury tangled with desperation. Fiona's lips curled in a bitter smile. "Endings are illusions, Miranda. You've destroyed the man, but not the monster. And monsters always return." Miranda met her gaze, unflinching. "Then I'll be waiting." The days that followed were quiet. Damien was arrested, dragged through courts and headlines. Fiona vanished, her empire crumbling around her. Miranda rebuilt her life with Eliza beside her, stronger than before, scarred but unbroken. But Samantha remained gone, her loyalty still bound to Fiona. One evening, as Miranda sat by the fire, a package arrived. No sender, no return address. Inside, a photograph Samantha, standing beside Fiona, both smiling coldly. On the back, a single line written in bold ink. "This isn't over." Miranda's hand tightened around the photo, her jaw set. The war was over, but the battle for her daughter and her soul had only just begun.